What's going on, guys? Greg Jenkins here from Monkeypod Marketing. And if you may have heard me say this before, but I have a general rule that if I hear a question 3 times, I like to create a resource for that specific question, so that when it comes up a 4th time or a 5th time, I can just steer people toward the resource. And so this morning I got a question in my OG membership. Shout out to Amanda for this one. How can I send an email automatically and CC someone else, right? So I want to make an introduction between the contact and their account manager or something like that. And then actually shortly after I heard this one, I also saw the same question in a public Keap user group. Shout out to Janet on that one. And so I thought, you know what? I've heard this question plenty, probably more than 3 times, and it's time to do a resource on it. So there aren't any simple native options for this, but there are some not so simple options, both native and using Zapier, a third-party tool. So in this video, I'm going to walk through both choices. So follow along. All right, so first up, the native option. It involves using legacy templates. And so I call that out because this section, depending on your version of the software, you might not have this option at all. But if we look inside a campaign, right? So let's say somebody fills out a web form and we want to send the CC email, right? If you look at the different builder options here, I have the primary builder, and then I also have access to the legacy email builder here. And neither of these have a CC option, right? So I'm talking about like a carbon copy option. You send the 2, and then there's normally a CC and a BCC. You don't have those choices in either of these builders. But you do actually have them in the templates section. So if you go to this legacy template section, here I've got a legacy email template. You have the option to add a CC or a BCC, or both, right? That's part of the legacy template here. So I point that out, and I actually already have one set up, email CC template, where you can see it's going to the contact's primary email address, and it's CCing admin@monkeypodmarketing.com. So the goal here is, hey, I want to introduce you to Greg, who is CC'd on this email, right? Reach out if you need us. That's the whole function, the concept here, but there's plenty of different use cases for why you might want to CC someone on an email. So in order to, because this is a legacy template, you can't easily pull it into a campaign. So what you first need to do is set up an action set that sends that an email using that template. So let's set up an action set. You could do this in the marketing settings section or the CRM settings section. And we'll just build a new action set here. And we'll call it send email with CC. And then we'll choose send an email, and here we can choose email. You don't need to choose a category. You can just choose right from here, email, CC, template, and we'll click save. You could actually, as you can see, you can edit or modify or add a template there, but we'll just choose the one that I already have set up, and then we'll click save. So now we've got our action set created, send email with CC. So in the campaign here, rather than using one of the 2 existing email builders that we have in there, and I should point out that depending on when you signed up for Keap, formerly known as Infusionsoft, you might not see this legacy template, but you should have an action set here. So down under the process section, action set legacy, and what we can do is grab the one that we just created. So send an email CC with CC, there it is, and click save. So now, when somebody fills out this web form, they're going to be added to this sequence, and the first step here is going to be to run that action set, which will send the email with CC. So this is a native way to get that CC functionality, to have an email go out that goes to the recipient, the contact who triggered it, but also has a CC to another email address on there. Now, I recognize that not everyone will have this templates section. That probably won't work for some versions of Keap, right? If you're not on Max Classic, if you're on Max, or if you're on Pro, or if you just don't see this template section, then that might not be an option for you. So I want to walk through a second method for how you can send a CC email, this time using Zapier. So let's jump back into that campaign, and we will just delete that initial step. So rather than using an action set, And there might be some reasons to avoid using that legacy functionality anyway. So this might be the preferred route, even if you do have the legacy template section. But we're going to send an HTTP post to trigger a Zap. And then over here in Zapier, I'm going to set up the Zap, right? So this does require a paid Zapier account. Actually, I don't know if it requires a paid Zapier account because it's not using the Keap integration. It's just using the HTTP post catch hook. So anyway, we'll build it out, but I know many of you are already using Zapier. I think that it's a really obvious investment for almost every business on the planet. There's just so many use cases for it, but let's build one together here. So the trigger that I like to use is the webhook, and it is a premium Zap, so you will need a paid account here. But I like to do this because it is immediate, and it's just triggered by sending an HTTP post from the campaign builder. So you can see this is one of those instant triggers. Some of the different triggers have a little bit of a delay for how quickly they process, but this one functions immediately. So we get this URL from the Zap, and then we pop it in here in the post URL inside the campaign builder. So then we just need to choose what information we want to send, right? And this is going to be dependent on your use case, right? So you might send the contact name, and let's just make that simple, one word. And then you could merge in the contact's first and last name. There we go. And you might send the contact email. That might be important so that you can merge it into wherever you are sending the email through Zapier. And then you might add like their company name, right? And we'll merge that in. And let's, there may be you might want to CC the contact owner, right? So contact owner might be the email address that we are CCing. So let's use that one. Again, these variables could change based on your use case, right? So this isn't like a formulaic way to structure all Zaps or anything like that. It's just for this example, these are the names and then the values that we're sending. And then here's a pro tip of mine. When I am testing a Zap, you can test it from within here, but it's going to merge in information from the user record, right? Which, depending on the variables you're sending, that might complicate the Zap you're trying to test. So what I usually do is just make a quick duplicate here, and then I'll replace those with hard-coded values. So let's do Stevie Bud, and we'll do Stevie at rosebudmotel.com. We'll do Rosebud Motel. And then the owner email will do admin at monkeypodmarketing.com. So I just hard code the values in here so that when I test it, you can see the test was sent successfully. When I pull up that information here on the next page, I know exactly what the values I'm expecting are. And you can see it has found company name, contact owner, and email. So now we've got the information we need to build out the rest of this Zap. And then once you've done that, once you've pushed your test through, you can just delete that the clone that you made, knowing that this one is going to use dynamic information as the merge fields populate. So once you've got your information pushed through the Zap, go ahead and click continue, and then you want to set up your next step. So I'm going to use Gmail because that's where I host my email, but you could use a different email service. I think Zapier might also have a built-in functionality for sending its own email, but let's just do send an email here. But you can choose the email account you already have attached, or you can connect one at this stage, and then you can populate what you want to have happen here. So using the email address that was received in that initial step, we choose our to. And then here, it allows you to configure, who you're CCing. And this, like I said, could be a static address that you type in, gregjenkins4@gmail.com, or it could be a variable address that was sent with the post if it's like the contact owner, and that could change, right? So a couple of options there for how you configure the CCs or the BCCs. And then the from address, you would choose who you want that email to come from, the from name, so Greg at Monkeypod, and the reply to address, that's going to be Greg at monkeypodmarketing.com, and the subject line, so introducing you to, and you could actually merge in values here, right? So introducing Stevie Bud, and you could merge in the owner, Greg, or a variable if you had passed it along with the email address at the beginning. And then here's the email, right? So you could choose a plain text or an HTML email depending on how complicated you want to get here. But hey, Stevie, just wanted to introduce you to Greg. And you could say CC'd. Let us know if you have any questions. Love, us, right? So obviously this email could be whatever you need it to be. You could choose your signature, label, any attachments you want, and that's it, guys. So a simple two-step Zap triggered from the campaign builder. I don't want to test this because this is not an email, an actual email address. So I'm going to go ahead and skip test rather than create a bounce for myself. But at the very end here, all you would do is then switch this Zap on. And then the beauty is now as somebody comes through this campaign, when they submit that web form, you can have internal actions run, you can have tasks created, tags applied, notes applied, but this Zap or this HTTP post is going to trigger that Zap by achieving this catch hook and then firing off the email from your Gmail. So a couple of different options here. Yes, if you have the legacy template section, you can potentially use that triggered via an action set. But even if you don't, or maybe it's better or more flexible, you have the option of using Zapier to send an email through Gmail or through any of the other Zapier tools that you may have configured there. So a couple of good options here for CCing different people throughout your automated campaigns. I'm not suggesting that every step needs to be that complex, but I also know that there are plenty of use cases where you want someone else to be CC'd on an email. And so this gives you hopefully a few options for layering that into your existing automation. If you found this helpful, please feel free to subscribe. Feel free to share it with anyone who you think would benefit from it, or leave a comment if you have any questions below. Later, guys.